Welcome back to 20 Minutes of Clarity, your go-to podcast to get better informed financial information so that you can make better choices and reach your financial ambitions. I'm your host, Jason Noble, and with me today is a special guest, Dale Kelly. He's a financial advisor out of our Memphis office, and he has about 20 years of financial planning and investment experience. And I'm grateful that he is joining us today because this is a special edition of 20 Minutes of Clarity where we're talking to those that are facing layoffs, especially at Boeing. We are seeing more and more companies doing layoffs right now is an awful reflection of where we're at in our economy. But this is to help people make better informed decisions as they are facing a layoff. So at Boeing, they like to call it an ILO. That a lot nicer than a layoff, but it's all in the same essence. And Dale, you and I have been helping Boeing employees navigate these decisions in 2017, 2018, 2020, and now again here in 2024. So you can see why this was such an important thing. As we go through this conversation, we want you to take notes, write down questions that you may have or ideas that we provide. This is to help you out. And if you are interested in speaking with a specialist, go to clearpicturefinancial.com. Go ahead and click on speaking with a specialist, and we will reach out to you to make sure that we are not talking in generalities in those meetings. We'll be very specific to your situation. So without further ado, the man right next to me, Dale, should not be quiet too much longer. We want to hear his important thoughts and views. And I think it would be best to start off with a high level overview. We got the Boeing pension and also the VIP, the 401k. Can you just give us a discussion of things that people should be considering with a layoff within the pension and the 401k?
Sure, definitely. I mean, Jason, you and I have been doing this a long time. We've helped a lot of people through this type of situation. We learned a lot along the way. I think one of the most important things you can do immediately is evaluate your financial situation, and that includes your traditional pension benefit if you are one of the senior employees there that has that, or if you're one of the newer employees and you don't, then you're left with just the 401k, and it's really time to sit down and figure out how you might leverage those in your new situation. If you're not going back to work there, you've got options. We need to help you figure out how you might utilize those to get through this time. But big differences in the traditional pension. You have lifetime income options that are predictable at retirement. But if you're laid off and you're not of age, that may not be accessible to you right now. The 401k, obviously, most popular is probably the IRA rollover. Gives you a lot more investment options than what is available in the Boeing VIP and more flexibility. I know, Jason, you've helped a lot of people up there. I've helped a lot of people in Huntsville manage through that VIP over the last 20 years. But when job changes happen, oftentimes it's time to take a look at some different options and see what's out there. 38,000 investment choices versus the index options you're allowed in your 401k. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you take a look at the Boeing VIP, for instance, the investment choices are a lot of target date funds. It's almost half our target date investments where there's no customization whatsoever to the employee. Now the other half is either active funds or index funds, and it's just a few really. And when I take a look at building out a strategy inside the VIP, there's really about 9 to 11 choices really that are even viable. But then inside of an IRA, to your point, we're looking at 38,000 plus investment choices. So we could be more tactical. Like a good example of that is the total bond market fund inside of the Boeing VIP. Well, it's an aggregate investment, meaning it has the entire bond market. And now most of the bonds in the bond market are intermediate to long-term bonds. In 2022, that is the worst place you wanted to be in the bond market. You didn't want to have long-term
Mhm.
duration. We wanted to shorten that duration. So inside of an IRA, we were able to do that. We were able to sell off the long-term investments and buy the short-term bond investments because we could make a tactical adjustment. But when you have no tactical adjustments that you can make inside the VIP due to lack of investment choices, you're kind of just stuck with holding what you got, unfortunately. And that's not being proactive, that's more of a reactionary thing. So going to the 401k, if you were facing that layoff, It's portable, meaning you can move it to a new 401k at another firm. And that's going to be dependent upon what their fees are versus the Boeing's fees, what are their investment choices, so forth and so on. Or you could also move it into a rollover IRA. Now, this is a complicated decision that you have to make sure you measure 3 times, cut once. Okay. And what we're saying here is you may want to work with a qualified specialist that can help you evaluate this decision. I want to circle back to the pension, though. Now, Bowen, I'm talking to you specifically. You got to look at the solvency of that pension if you're going to take that lifetime income. Okay. And there's so many different choices that you have to make as well on that pension side of the equation. If you're going to take the pension, right, what does that look like? Are you looking at doing single life, joint life? Is there going to be a 10-year certain period that if you pass away within those 10 years, then the surviving spouse gets that monthly income still, right? What does that look like from that perspective from a financial planning approach? Or are you going to take the lump sum? I gotta say, with a new regulation that came in, MAPS 21 accounting, it really started to really like move the pension calculations in a way on their balance sheet to show more favorability than what it was in reality. That's causing a lot of people concern, and I think it's definitely worthy of discussing on this podcast so that people could then go look into this with their own information, with their own eyes. HR department will provide you this information on the pension so that you can read it. It's about, I want to say 62 pages of pure glory. You're gonna love it. If you have a hard time sleeping, this is the cure to insomnia from Boeing, right? That's something you could thank them for. But like, to all jokes aside, if you have a pension, you really have to evaluate what does this look like from a financial planning perspective all the way through versus taking the lump sum, right? And like, you know, again, this is all towards Boeing. My clients who retire from the government, they have cost of living adjustments on their pension. Boeing, you do not. What you get, if it's $3,000 a month, it's $3,000 a month today, as it will be 20, 30 years from now, right? And Dale, what is like $3,000 a month 20 years ago? Probably could have got you a lot more purchasing power than about today, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the risks we face in some pension plans that do not have those COLA adjustments is inflation risk. And the company itself is faced with financial risk and keeping the pension plan solvent. And then longevity risk. People are living longer, which is why many companies have went away from traditional pensions. So they've become expensive for companies. And, I think it's a great idea to sit down with someone, bring your 62-page document. We'll go through it with you. Let's make sure, we're taking care of the individual. Every individual situation is different. Some are married, some are not. Some could use the lump sum option to put towards some other investment. I think, Jason, one of the things our team does very well is treating each individual like an individual case.
That's right.
We've seen several people from Boeing. I've seen 4 people in the last week from International Paper who were laid off, and each case is individual. So, if you come in and you go to the website and meet with one of our specialists, we're going to look at your case as an individual case because I think it's that important. Traditional pension selections are most of the time irrevocable. So we need to get it right the first time.
Yeah, and to take Dale's Latin into English, irrevocable means there's no do-over. There's no like redo like we used to play in the backyard was playing stickball.
Yeah,
No, you make your decision, you got to sleep with that decision and eat it for the rest of your life. So make sure you measure 3 times and cut once on this decision.
absolutely.
Let's talk about that Boeing stock now. Okay, I don't want to harp on it too much,
Sure.
right? Because those that are working there, they see it every day they go to lunch, right? It's right there. But the risk that are the headwinds that are being involved right now in Boeing stock is about what, 45 billion in
Right.
debt.
Yeah.
They got lowered on their credit rating.
It is a possibility. I mean, there's some strong headwinds out there. I mean, they had, already soft airline numbers, and now this machinist strike is only going to make that more difficult to recover from. They've had some mergers, Spirit Aero Systems and things that have impacted the balance sheet and the debt load. So, Boeing's been in the news for a few years now, right? It's not a stock that I'm saying anybody should dump, but it should be looked at again from an individual situation. What did you buy it for? Is it fast cash or is it a long-term investment? Is it in a after-tax account or is it in your 401k? All that can play into the decision making of what do I do with this stock. But for most people, if you're in it for the long run, the answer is probably nothing. But I certainly recommend making sure that it is built into part of a diversified portfolio if you're going to hold it, right? So,
I agree with you. And the thing that I've been focusing on with Boeing, especially with the volatility that we've seen over the last handful of years. And when I say volatility, everyone at Boeing knows what I mean. Okay.
right,
Hedging, hedging strategies around the Boeing position. Being able where if the Boeing stock does pull back significantly, you don't go down as much because you put on a hedge. Now, this is a very sophisticated approach, and you have to work with a qualified professional that knows how to do it. Now, if you're going to work with a professional, if you're going to go at this your own, look up hedging strategies on a concentrated position, right?
absolutely.
Understand it. You could do this yourself. However, it could get very sophisticated rather quickly, and you really have to know your entry points and your exit points when you're doing a hedging strategy. But I was just showing this to a person that was working at Boeing yesterday, where they had a lot of Boeing stock over the years due to their stock options and other things that came about or just over the years. And with their portfolio, it was like, okay, if we put down a 10% hedge, Boeing drops down more than 10%, he's going to be protected at the 10% loss.
Absolutely.
So he felt very comfortable with that, and we were able to then start executing on that going into early next week. So it's not like an immediate turnaround, but it's pretty quick. But when I brought it up to him, he goes, I never even thought I could do this. And I said, this is why you came in to meet with us so that we could have this conversation. Right.
So
So now he's excited that he's going to have that downside protection. And if Bowen pops, he's able to participate in the upside as well.
absolutely. And downside protection is important and even more important the older you get, right? I know I have a lot of clients who have crossed that 55-year-old age mark, and that's when you tend to start thinking about retirement and what you're going to do later. And it's time for a risk management strategy. Right? And if you're going to hold a single position like that in a volatile firm, having a hedging strategy is a great idea. Right?
Let's get into what I would say those that are watching right now and listening and they got the layoff notice. What are a few things, top three things they should be doing right now as they're listening to us to help them navigate this next phase of their life?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a minute ago, how many times we've had to help people through this, and I've been through it myself, so I understand from a personal perspective. I think the most important thing you can do right now is remain positive and have a plan, right? And that having that plan involves, reviewing your financial situation again. It always amazes me how many people come into my office for the first time, they've never had a budget, right? And maybe they're making $200,000 a year and living comfortably, but they've never actually sat down with a pen and paper and wrote down everything that's coming in and going out. I think if I were without a job tomorrow, that would be the first place I would start is trying to figure out my inflows and outflows and how I'm going to make that happen. So, sources of income are important. Maybe you want to file for unemployment if you thought about that and what that process looks like. But I think for you and I both, Jason, it always comes back to having a plan. And during those days when you're off work, I think having a schedule for the day, whether it be, I'm going to sit down and review my LinkedIn profile, review my resume, just having a schedule and some sort of purpose when you wake up every day to keep you busy. And then spend some of that time meeting with a financial professional. I mean, there are people out there that do not charge for initial consultations that have been doing it for a long time that will sit down and go through things with you. But now's the time to build a plan. I think the old saying is hope is not a strategy, right? So let's sit down and build a strategy for you to give you that peace of mind. Um,
I look at like focusing on what you can control. what you can
Sure.
influence. This may have happened to you being laid off, but putting a plan in place, you could actually start to put it in a situation where it happened for you. And maybe you just were burnt out at work or you weren't happy with the culture of what was going on. I mean, and then you go and okay, you know what? Like, let me start looking at what I can control, what I can influence, and it starts putting you in a better position to navigate through this. Here's a great
Absolutely.
example of this. You talked about budget. I would say in our office here, Dale, budget's a four-letter word for a lot of clients. They're like,
Sure.
don't you put me on that budget, right?
Right.
Right? No, but it's like, okay, take a look at your expenses. I know you and I both have client portals that our clients can link up their accounts and they can look
Sure.
at where they're spending their money. So look at those different categories and put an E or a D next to those different categories.
Absolutely.
E stands for essential and D is Dale. No, I'm sorry. D is discretionary, right? Okay, so we have essential and we have discretionary expenses. Now, the first thing is to look at the discretionary. How often are you streaming from this different from like Paramount Plus? Are you watching the shows on a regular basis? If so, maybe keep it. If not, maybe cut that down for a while. You could always renew it down the road, right?
Absolutely.
There's those aspects of the discretionary expenses. And I've seen clients where they link their accounts up and they were able to see that they were paying for like multiple subscriptions that they weren't even using.
Absolutely.
Good
Yeah.
chance to go in there and clean that up. That's just on the discretionary. But like an essential expense that I've seen overlooked quite a bit is just like home and auto insurance. Now I'm being granular on this podcast for a reason. You right now, if you're listening and you're facing this layoff and you already got laid off, let's say, you need to get granular. You need to
Right.
be able to tell your money where to go instead of finding out where it went. Okay. And this is
Absolutely.
where you're looking at these different aspects and you're like, I have not evaluated my home and auto in 5 years. Now's the time. You got the time, use the time wisely so that you can start working on seeing how you can keep more money in your pocket. And let's go into Uncle Sam's or into the insurance premiums,
Right.
you know. The other thing, I loved what you said is have a plan for the day. What is that purpose that you're going to have when you wake up? You know, we have to have these conversations with our clients who retire. It's a transition
Right.
to retirement. And it's like, okay, if you're going to paint that room when you're working, you got to paint that room over the weekend. However, when you're going through the transition of the layoff or you're retired, what you're going to do is you're going to tape off the room at first, right? And you're going to
Yeah.
go do a couple color swatches, right?
Right.
That
Right.
project should take you no less than 3 days, right? No
Sure.
less. I didn't say no more, but no
Absolutely.
less than 3 days, right? Get the primer, get the coats, get the second, third coat, right? That
Sure.
so just take your time and enjoy this period of life. But the last thing that I want to reiterate on this particular topic is what are you doing for that next phase of life? Are you in a position to retire? If so, what does this look like? This is a blessing. Maybe it didn't happen on your time or your terms, but you're able to then transition into the next phase of life of retirement. But what if
Absolutely.
you, and I'm talking to you right now, you're not ready to retire? You're not there financially or you're not there mentally, right? It could be both. What are you doing? Are you waiting for the phone to ring? Are you going into your LinkedIn or creating a LinkedIn profile? Because that's honestly where people go to network and stuff. Are you
Absolutely.
doing that? Are you reaching out to old friends and colleagues that you used to work with that are still working there or maybe retired or moved on to another company, right? And just going, hey, I'm in the market again. I'd love to see what your thoughts are working where you are. This is our worlds are intertwined. They say Wall Street's only 7 blocks long. I can't tell you how many people that I meet in my office that work at Boeing. They've known their friends and colleagues for 30, 40 years,
Right.
right? And they have moved and people have moved to different companies and they still know each other. And I'm like, hey, give them a call. Give them a call. I'm sure they'll love to hear from you. And next thing you know, I'm getting a phone call from that client going, I did what you said. It felt awkward. It was weird, but I called. They were extremely happy to hear from me because they were looking for someone in their new company with the skill sets and role that I'd done here. And guess what, Jason? It's a small pay raise and I don't have to move. What? Like, all
Absolutely.
because they picked up the phone and made a phone call and just had a conversation with someone they used to work with. It's something small like that can make a big impact. They say the biggest doors rely on the smallest hinges. Dale, I'm
Absolutely.
going to ask you this. Do you think people listening could actually act on that advice that we just gave them?
Absolutely. I mean, I have several success stories of people who have went through ILOs or reduction in forces who, took some time to maybe explore a passion or call some friends, and it led to a great success story. I mean, one of my clients from FedEx was, riffed out of work about 5 years ago and decided to explore a passion of podcasting and leadership speaking. And that's what he does for a living now. And he's probably the happiest client I have. So he no longer works for FedEx, but he has his own podcast and his own company where he goes out and speaks to marketing teams about leadership and simplifying their processes. So, I know from the people I've worked with, and I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, where there are 10 defense contractors in the same parking lot. So, networking is important. But if you work for Boeing, I'm going to say that you are a talented individual with marketable skills. And you're going to not have a problem continuing your career, whether it's at Boeing or not. But definitely take the time to explore your passions, dust off the resume, reach out to those contacts. And even if exploring a new passion doesn't lead to a new career, it brought you some joy during a stressful time, right? But I think now is the time to utilize your free time, reach out to those contacts, maybe hire a resume professional. Nowadays, the algorithms kind of make everything flow through the internet. So if you haven't updated your resume in 10 years, you're probably behind. But I think that's some very actionable advice to begin with. Utilize your time, reach out to old contacts, dust off the resume, maybe explore re-education, and take the time to sit down with a financial professional and get a reset on your financial situation. That's what I
Dale,
would do at this
Dale,
point.
in preparation for this conversation that we just had, you mentioned something I really want to bring to light here. It's not just staying positive, but focus on healthy habits.
Right.
I thought that was great because you could be going through an extremely emotional period of time right now as you listen to us and you're going, I don't know what's going to be next. And it could spiral into some mental health issues, right? How do we
Absolutely.
avoid that? I thought you had some like really good insight or some ideas on that side.
Yeah, again, you and I both lived through the financial crisis. I worked for Wachovia Bank when it failed. I've had some experiences like this, and I've always found, a late night gym session, pushing some weights around is really good for you. Nothing reduces stress like that, or maybe a treadmill. And find a professional to talk to if you need to. The stigma from that is gone. There's plenty of apps out there today where you don't have to leave your home. But I think taking care of your physical health and your mental health is top of order right now, and the two go together. So you got, if you're off work, you got a little more time to get to the gym, right, and take that hour a day to make that happen. And who knows? I've met a lot of people that are now networking connections at the gym. So I think all of the things we've talked about today, and we spent time preparing to be able to present some positives to a negative situation for some people. And that these are the action items I would start with, right, and start to roll that plan out. And I think before you know it, things will be a lot more positive.
Well, Dale, it's like one of those where I know that there's people that feel like this happened to them. And the thing that I kept on thinking about, in my mind's eye when we were preparing for this podcast and having this conversation is how can we help people be inspired, inspire them to then turn this around and this ILO happened for them, not just to them, but for them. And they have now this opportunity to pursue a passion that they have, to be connected with their family, spending more time with their spouses, their children, their grandchildren, or even their friends. Right? I could think of right now 5 friends that I could call, and I have not called in a while just because I'm busy. I'm
Right.
busy with work. I'm busy with life. Well, if I wasn't as busy, I could call those 5 friends and catch up like we never like lost step, you
Absolutely.
know? And
Absolutely.
and now I got the time. Maybe I could go see that friend and go
Right.
do something with them. Make this something that you could put back into your control and your lap. You can't do that if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a strategy and approach. You can do this if you did the things that we just discussed.
Absolutely.
Dale, as we wrap up, do you have any last thoughts for our listeners?
No, again, I think, you and I have laid out some things I think will help people get through this because I've used them myself. All right. I've used them personally. I've used them with clients, as early as this week from other places. And, again, like I said, if you worked for Boeing, you were selected by Boeing, you're a talented individual with marketable skills. No doubt your career is not over. But let Jason and I, let our team help you have some peace of mind, right? Come in, sit down with a professional that's been helping people through this for 20 years. And just let us look at your individual situation and give you some peace of mind.
For our ongoing listeners, you just listened to a special edition of 20 Minutes of Clarity with special guest Dale Kelly. And for those that are ongoing listeners, you now understand why he is a special guest. I love working with you, Dale. We have always have great conversations. I love your insight and the way that you approach the work that we do for our clients and serving our clients in times that they need us the most, which is right through a life change like an ILO.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is something I'm very passionate about. It's times like this where we really get to earn our pay. So, if we can help anybody in any way, let us know.
We want you to like this podcast. We want you to send it to a friend. We want you to follow us, but also go to clearpicturefinancial.com. You could watch this podcast right there as well. And then also you could download the white paper from this podcast so that you have the written notes. We are always here to serve from 20 minutes of clarity to your home. Have a good rest of your day. And I know Dell and I are men of faith. God be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely.